There is an old saying that all of us are familiar with: those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. In 2016, when Donald J. Trump became President of the United States of America for the very first time, many wise people, in their infinite wisdom, decided to blame Jimmy Fallon for it. What was Jimmy Fallon's fault? He had committed the crime of humanizing Donald Trump on one episode of The Tonight Show. Mainstream media must have received the memo of sorts this time around because there was no Donald Trump on any episode of any late night talk show that I am aware of. But the media landscape has changed in 2024. It is no longer like it was in 2016. Podcasts and YouTube shows attract significant eyeballs now, almost comparable, if not more, than that attracted by media behemoths like CNN. Podcast interviews are often of a much longer duration. Sometimes they may be meandering, but it allows the speakers the time and space to clearly articulate their viewpoints if they are capable of doing so. With good podcasters, some of whom are not even journalists, a worthy back and forth can make for very interesting viewing as well as listening experience. It is no wonder then that when you think of a modern day media giant, you don't think of an Anderson Cooper, but instead you think of a Joe Rogan. So Donald Trump attended a number of podcasts in 2024. He did a podcast with the All In team comprising of four venture capitalists: Chamath Palihapitiya, Jason Calacanis, David Sachs, and David Friedberg. He did a podcast with a computer scientist from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Lex Friedman, the Lex Friedman podcast. Not to get too technical, he even did the Flagrant podcast with a bunch of comedians, including Andrew Schulz. He then went on arguably the most intelligent podcast in the world right now, the PBD podcast. I remember Patrick Bet-David, better known as PBD, trying to convince Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience to have Donald Trump as a guest on the Joe Rogan Experience. And Joe Rogan refused to agree at that time. Patrick Bet-David had said that a person like Donald Trump would only start doing podcasts if he started with the top podcast in the world, which at that time, and I believe even today, is the Joe Rogan Experience. But as it turned out, Trump did the PBD podcast before he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. Trump even did a podcast with The Undertaker, 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway. Lex Friedman had encouraged Joe Rogan to have Donald Trump on his show in the Lex Friedman podcast, but Joe Rogan once again had shown no interest whatsoever in doing so. But I want to talk about the role played by Patrick Bet-David in Donald Trump's electoral victory in the presidential elections in the United States of America in 2024. PBD is a very intelligent man. He told Joe Rogan that Donald Trump should appear on the Joe Rogan Experience. Joe Rogan did not seem too receptive to the idea back then. Patrick Bet-David said on air on his PBD podcast that to influence Joe Rogan, Donald Trump needed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his corner. Sure enough, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropped out of the presidential race and endorsed Donald Trump. It must also be said that Dana White's proximity to both Joe Rogan and Donald Trump must have also played a role in ensuring Donald Trump's first ever appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. But to the credit of Joe Rogan, even after Trump appeared on his show and point blank asked for Joe Rogan's endorsement, citing the fact that even Elon Musk had endorsed Donald Trump's campaign, Rogan simply smiled and avoided endorsing Trump then and there. Rogan even told Trump that he wanted Kamala Harris to do his show, and who knows, maybe Joe Rogan would have humanized Kamala Harris much more than he managed to humanize Donald Trump. At least no other interviewer was able to humanize Kamala Harris to a very effective degree. Trump ended up having a 3-hour-long video conversation with Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience. This episode had more than 40 million views on YouTube the last time I checked. That's more views than all of Kamala Harris's interviews combined. Kamala Harris not only refused to appear on the Joe Rogan Experience, but asked Joe Rogan to fly to a destination of her choosing to do an interview lasting for 1 hour. Remember, Donald Trump did a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. Naturally, Joe Rogan refused. The last nail in the coffin, in my humble opinion, was the double whammy of Kamala Harris not appearing on the Joe Rogan Experience but instead appearing on Saturday Night Live, and Elon Musk appearing on the Joe Rogan Experience and making a quote unquote compelling case for voting for Donald Trump in the presidential elections of 2024. This resulted in the king of podcasters and a once self proclaimed Bernie Sanders supporter, Joe Rogan, officially endorsing Donald Trump, the Republican candidate for president in 2024. Bernie Sanders himself, in an open letter, said that the Democratic Party should not be surprised that those working class voters who had been abandoned by the Democratic Party had now chosen to abandon the Democratic Party themselves. But it is not just something that is applicable to the working class, in my humble opinion. Billionaires like Elon Musk, media giants like Joe Rogan, and even Arab Americans in Michigan were almost chased out of the Democratic Party, especially in the presidential race, getting no sympathetic hearing and completely deprived of any feasible hope of having their dreams fulfilled. So instead of repeating history and further attacking people like Joe Rogan for humanizing Donald Trump, just as Jimmy Fallon was attacked for doing the same in 2016, I think it would be a better idea to introspect to figure out why today a self-proclaimed Bernie Sanders supporter like Joe Rogan first has to become someone without a party and ends up becoming someone who officially endorses Donald Trump, the Republican Party candidate for President of the United States. These warnings were uttered multiple times on various podcasts online, but it appears that the powers that be in the Democratic Party must have forgotten to smash the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I hope you liked this video. Take care, bye bye, and please don't forget to be awesome.